You probably heard the joke about Red Lobster going bankrupt because of too much shrimp. But what if the real reason was more like Wall Street selling your house, then charging you rent to sleep in your own bed, over and over, across America? Private equity calls it efficiency. The rest of us just see brands we love gutted for cash. How did these financial vampires pull it off, and who let them turn everyday companies into their personal cash machines? Picture a boardroom where the only thing colder than the air conditioning is the calculation behind every move. At the head of the table sits the so-called vampire king, the general partner. This is not some genius entrepreneur building the next Apple. This is a guy with a stopwatch and a calculator, because for him, time is literally money. Every year he skims 2% off the top of whatever he is managing, whether the businesses thrive or collapse. That means if he is playing with a $1 billion fund, he pockets $20 million a year just for existing, before doing a single thing for the companies he owns. The real payday comes if he sells fast and walks away rich. Most funds have a 10-year ticking clock, but the real action is in the first 3 to 5 years. Buy, bleed, exit. The longer he waits, the more he risks missing his bonus window. So forget slow turnarounds or long-term fixes. The Vampire King wants his money now, not a decade from now. That is why you see a parade of beloved brands on the chopping block, because for him, every day the meter is running, and the only thing that matters is getting paid before the clock runs out. Here is how the infinite money glitch actually works. Imagine you are eyeing a massive mansion, gold faucets, marble floors, the works. But you are not dropping $100 million of your own cash. No, you show up with just $10 million and a killer grin. You convince the mansion itself to take out a $90 million loan, using its own walls, roof, and future as collateral. Suddenly you own the place, but the house is the one stuck with the mortgage. If the mansion throws a wild party and the value goes up, you pocket the profit. If the roof caves in or the market tanks, you hand the keys to the bank and stroll away. Wallet fat, reputation somehow intact. Now let us run the math. Private equity deals are almost always built this way. 10% to 40% real cash from the buyer, the rest loaded onto the company's back as debt. Sometimes 60%, 70%, even 90%. All the risk lands on the company, its workers, and anyone dumb enough to lend them money. The upside flows to the private equity firm if things go right. The downside is not their problem. This is not business genius. It is just passing the bill to someone else and calling it innovation. The best part? The Vampire King gets paid even when the house is burning down. Welcome to the magical world of fees. Every year, the private equity firm pockets a 2% management fee just for looking after the company. Think of it as a babysitter charging you extra to watch your house burn after they lit the match. But wait, there is more. They also slap on transaction fees for buying or selling anything, and monitoring fees for monitoring. Red Lobster paid millions in these fees while its rent ballooned. Toys R Us was the same deal. Millions bled away in fees before the doors even closed. Now, what about all that risky debt they loaded onto these companies? That is where the banks cook up a special stew. Picture a chef with a pile of rotten fish, bad loans from all these struggling companies. Instead of throwing them out, he chops them up, mixes them with a few fresh ones, and serves the whole mess as seafood stew to your grandma's pension fund. This is called a collateralized loan obligation known as CLO. The top layer, the AAA tranches, get paid first, like VIPs at a buffet. If the stew goes bad, the folks at the bottom get food poisoning, but the chef already cashed out. The banks and the private equity guys are long gone, on to their next feast, while everyone else gets stuck with the bill. Picture the classic toy store. Aisles of Nerf guns, Lego castles, and a giant giraffe that is basically childhood in mascot form. Now picture a masked robber at the cash register, scooping out every dollar before the doors even open. That is not a cartoon. It is exactly what happened to Toys R Us. In 2017, the owners, private equity giants KKR, Bain, and Vornado, forced the company to borrow $470 million. But this was not for new stores or better toys. No. The whole point was to funnel a massive bonus straight to themselves. They called it a dividend recapitalization. Translation: make the company take out a loan, then hand the cash to the people in charge. Employees kept stocking shelves, parents kept buying birthday presents, but the register was already empty. The debt mountain grew so high that even a holiday shopping spree could not save them. Board meeting memos from that spring warned the company was teetering on insolvency, but the executives shrugged and cashed out anyway. By 2018, 33,000 workers were out of a job and every store was shuttered. The owners walked away with their bonus, blaming changing retail trends. It turns out the only thing that changed was who got paid first, and it was not the kids. Now let's talk about the cheat code that keeps the Vampire King's wallet fat and the IRS sweating. It's called carried interest, but it might as well be called the aristocrat loophole. Here is how the magic trick works. When a private equity firm flips a company and cashes in, the profits are not taxed like regular income. Nope. They get the VIP treatment, just 20% tax, instead of the 37% rate you would pay if you worked for a living. So the guy shuffling debt in a glass tower pays less tax than the nurse cleaning up after grandma. Makes sense, right? This isn't some ancient relic. In 2017, Congress looked at closing the loophole. But after a few steak dinners with Blackstone's Steve Schwarzman and his friends, the loophole survived. Emails and calendars show those meetings happened right before the final vote. And every year, lobbyists swarm Capitol Hill to keep the gravy train rolling. The argument is that gambling with other people's money is risk-taking that deserves a reward. But let's be real. If you can lose someone else's company, walk away rich, and pay less tax than a janitor, you're not an entrepreneur. You're just a well-dressed pirate with a lobbyist on speed dial. Imagine running a grocery store that's been around since your grandparents' time. The aisles are stocked, the regulars wave hello, and the biggest stress should be whether to order more bananas or bagels. Then a private equity firm steps in, and suddenly you are not just selling groceries, you are paying rent to a stranger for the very building you used to own. That is what happened to Marsh Supermarkets in Indiana. In 2007, they sold 41 stores to a real estate trust for a quick $155 million cash hit. Overnight, Marsh went from owning its walls to writing checks, starting at $12.5 million a year in rent. But here is the catch. The lease had a 7% annual rent increase baked in, not tied to sales, not tied to inflation, just an automatic compounding squeeze. By 2015, rent had ballooned to over $28 million a year. That is more than double what they started with, while grocery profit margins barely scrape 2%. Every year, the rent monster ate a bigger chunk of their sales, leaving less for workers, inventory, or upgrades. Shoppers noticed empty shelves. Employees watched hours get cut. The chain filed for bankruptcy, blaming escalating lease obligations as the top reason. The real estate got richer, the community lost its grocery store. That is the grocery rent trap. Selling the farm to pay the mortgage, then wondering why there is nothing left in the barn. Walk into your local vet or dentist office, and everything feels the same. Same fish tank, same faded photos, same logo on the door. But here is the plot twist. Behind the scenes, half the clinics in your zip code quietly belong to the same Wall Street overlord. Private equity loves a good roll-up. They swoop in, buy every practice in sight, and slap a different name on each location so you think you are picking between rivals. Spoiler, you are not. It is monopoly. All the properties are secretly owned by one player, and you are just rolling the dice to see how much you owe. The numbers are brutal. After a roll-up, Prices for basic services like teeth cleaning or pet vaccines jump by about 30%. Local vets who used to set their own rates now get marching orders from a spreadsheet in Manhattan. The old owner is usually locked into a contract, stuck watching as longtime clients get nickel and dimed. And the kicker? If you want to complain, good luck. The customer service line leads straight to a call center that probably handles 5 other fake competitors in your town. So next time you wonder why your dog's annual checkup costs more than your car insurance, remember, the Monopoly man just bought Boardwalk and Park Place, and he is coming for free parking too. Owning a home used to be the American dream. Now, for millions, it is just another monthly subscription brought to you by Wall Street. After the 2008 crash, private equity giants like Blackstone went on a shopping spree, snapping up hundreds of thousands of single-family homes with the click of a mouse. Forget the kindly landlord who lives down the street. Your new landlord is a spreadsheet running on a server in Manhattan. Here is how the game works. Software scans your neighborhood, buys up every house it can, and then uses another algorithm to decide if you actually get that leaky faucet fixed. If the numbers do not add up, the request is denied. Internal dashboards at some of these firms show that 40% of tenant complaints are ignored or auto-closed. The less they spend on repairs, the more they can brag about maximizing returns in earnings calls. Meanwhile, rents keep climbing, up 40% in some private equity-heavy zip codes, while families wait weeks for basic fixes. The result is that the American dream is now a subscription service, and the only thing guaranteed is that the landlord's profits get priority over your busted air conditioner. Welcome to the era of the slumlord algorithm. Picture this. You break your arm, rush to the nearest emergency room, and do everything right. Pick an in-network hospital, hand over your insurance card, and try not to bleed on the paperwork. Weeks later, a bill shows up bigger than your rent. Turns out the doctor who patched you up doesn't actually work for the hospital. He works for a private equity-owned staffing company with a business model built on loopholes. The hospital is in network, but the doctor isn't, so your insurance covers almost nothing. Average surprise? Over $1,000, sometimes $5,000 or more. It is not rare. Before recent reforms, this hit millions of Americans a year, racking up $42 billion in surprise bills annually. Congress tried to ban the practice, but private equity firms just found new angles, like creative coding or shell staffing firms. Internal memos from firms like KKR and Envision show they knew exactly what they were doing, rating public backlash as medium risk while prioritizing profit margins. For patients, this is legal extortion at your most vulnerable moment. You do not get to negotiate when you are on a gurney. They own the doctors, they own the billing, and they know you will pay. Because what is the alternative? Bleed in the parking lot? Walk into a nursing home owned by private equity, and the first thing you will notice is not the fancy logo or the fresh paint. It is the silence. Fewer nurses at the desk, fewer aides in the halls. After the buyout, the new owners did not see patients, they saw line items. Every hour of care became a cost to cut. The spreadsheets asked, why pay for 2 nurses when one can do the work of 3? So staff got slashed, and grandma's wait for help stretched from minutes to hours. It is not just a bad vibe, it is deadly. Researchers at the University of Southern California ran the numbers. After a private equity firm takes over, the death rate in those homes jumps by 10%. That is not a rounding error. That is thousands of real people, moms, dads, veterans, who do not get the help they need. One study found nurse-to-patient ratios dropped by as much as 20% after a takeover. Families started noticing bruises, bed sores, and unanswered call buttons. But on the spreadsheet, it all looked like efficiency. To the private equity guys, grandma is not a person. She is a depreciating asset. The faster they can cut costs, the faster they can cash out. And if the home goes under, there is always another one to buy, another set of lives to reduce to numbers. There is a mountain of corporate debt coming due, and it is about to avalanche. Over $1 trillion in private equity-backed loans and bonds will hit their expiration date between 2025 and 2027. These are the IOUs that kept buyouts, roll-ups, and rent traps humming during the era of cheap money. Back when interest rates were basically free, private equity firms loaded up companies with debt like kids piling candy at Halloween. Now the sugar rush is over. Companies have to refinance at rates that are double or even triple what they paid before, 5 to 7% instead of 2%. For a business already squeezed by rent hikes, surprise bills, and staffing cuts, that extra interest is a death sentence. The numbers are brutal. $400 billion is due in 2025, $600 billion in 2026, and another $400 billion in 2027. Bankers call it the maturity wall, but for workers and customers it is more like a trapdoor. If companies cannot pay, they collapse. Stores shutter. Hospitals close. Jobs vanish. Meanwhile, the private equity bosses who set the timer on this bomb have already cashed out with bonuses and fees. They will float away with their golden parachutes while the rest of us get buried in the rubble. The real risk is not just one company or one industry. It is the entire economy, built on a pile of IOUs that nobody wants to pay back. Right now, over $1 trillion in private equity-backed debt is coming due, while the average American sees fewer choices, higher bills, and vanishing safety nets. These aren't abstract numbers. They shape your next grocery run, your hospital visit, your rent. In a system run for extraction, the real cost is paid by everyone else. The question is, how long will we keep calling this progress? Drop your thoughts below.